So let's get into farming. So how does your typical Indian coffee farm look like?
I think the first image that comes, when you think of a coffee plantation is there are these little 4 feet coffee trees that are there. So we actually have trees also in the middle, like the local trees, like your fig tree, jackfruit, pomelo trees. So this is the type of environment in which coffee is.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a monoculture type of crop.
Okay.
And also there are levels of canopy that you get to see, like especially for Robusta in our plantation, we have at least 3 tiers of canopy. Whereas in Arabica, you normally get to see 4 to 5 tires.
What do you mean by tires of canopy?
So it's like different levels of canopy. So each tree will be of a different height, right?
Okay.
So when you get to see a plantation, right? It's like there are those shorter trees and then a little taller, and it's like 1, 2, 3. Like that's like 3 tiers of your canopy levels. It's good for different mammals that are there, the birds that are there.
Does
They
it
like
have
to
any
be in-
impact on the coffee?
It's more like when I did my research, right? It was we used to see at what level the birds used to be, like a ground level, a middle level, top level. So there are different types of birds perching on different, like your predator species and your fruit-eating type of birds, and then your granivorous.
So why is canopy important for Robusta? Like canopy is for shading, right?
Yeah.
So can we grow Robusta without shading? And if yes, what would be the output difference? I mean, does shading really a thing for coffee?
Actually, for Arabica, shading is very much required. But for Robusta, it's more of a sun type of plant.
Okay.
It requires the sun. But still, we have a particular amount of canopy that's there, like somewhere around maybe 30 to 60% of the canopy, which is very, very important, at least for the wildlife, and we make sure that at least that much is there. But when you're specific to coffee growing, of course, if it's like lesser, like 40%, that's good.
Doesn't placing fruit trees in the coffee plantation attract wildlife?
It
like
does.
monkeys especially?
We also have to see what is our preference, how we want to look at the plantation.
Correct.
Each person has a different idea of a plantation. Some people care about just the coffee, some people care just about the different crops. But for us, it's more about the wildlife that has to coexist with our coffee. At the end, they were always there just like us, They need their little space too.
When does the coffee flower?
The coffee flowering or the blossom time is actually during February, March.
Okay.
That's when we actually irrigate the coffee plants, which happens right after the harvest. So the harvest normally is going to be like December end, January mid, So 8 days after you have finished your harvesting, we already start with the irrigation so that the flowers bloom and they get pollinated,
So do you guys pollinate or you guys leave it to the nature?
We actually utilize the bees that are already there at the farm. Like they want the nectar anyways, and they also pollinate the coffee flowers, which is the cross pollination. So from one flower of a particular tree, it goes to the next tree of a different flower. Yeah. So this is the cross pollination that happens, without which we would not be having any Robusta coffee.
Well, haven't you tried beekeeping in the coffee plantation? Would that be a good idea, like beekeeping in the coffee coffee farm?
It is a good idea. In fact, you can try to get different types of honey also from the coffee plantation.
Yeah.
A very interesting thing, a lot of people are actually into this. Also an interest that I was into. I wanted to try this, but of course I've been trying different things and it was not possible to actually do this.
How long does it take for if I plant a coffee bean into the ground, and how long do I have to wait to get the first produce from that plant?
It will take about 4 to 7 years.
Ooh.
For the entire plant to mature in a very nice way and actually give you ample amount of fruit. What the ideal plant basically. But when it comes to the flowering, right, and then you get the fruits, so that takes about 9 months from flower to that fruit
Fruit.
stage. Yeah.
So what and all things you have to do to make sure, like from flowering to fruit, do you have to irrigate more or do you have to add fertilizer or something? Like how do you take care of the farm?
We irrigate during the blossom time, just before the blossom, and once the blossoms are like almost like they have been fertilized, we try to irrigate it again until the rains are persistent, right?
Okay.
So that would be somewhere around April, So until then, we have to continuously irrigate.
They're
Yeah,
very water thirsty
yeah,
plants.
yeah. So once we finish irrigating, we start the compost work, that we have to do, like manuring also is
So
very
what happens in
important.
compost work?
So we actually try to utilize any of the coffee skin that has been a waste,
Okay.
right? And then the pepper vines that have been waste. Like all crops have something, that's
Yeah.
left. So also the coconut, the skin, the
Husk.
the husk part of it. So all of that we dump into a huge pit,
Okay.
right? And then we layer it with the cattle manure and sheep manure if required. Then we also do poultry manure, and we try to also add water to it, so that the water actually helps in the decomposition. Yeah, and we sometimes after certain months we want it to be completely decomposed, so we actually feed it with the trichoderma, azotobacter, pseudomonas. These are the microbes that we add in, so that
In the
it
form of
complete-
granules or something?
they are already ready to use. Like when you get it, I don't know, like they just apply it that way, they just spread it around. So maybe it is in spore form, because immediately the minute it reaches, it has to multiply. So we do it on a ground level, like inside the
Okay.
ground there's a nice pit, right? This is in order to decompose in half the time. So if you do it on top of the soil, it will take about 6 months to decompose.
Why is the difference? Like
Because there's a heat generated inside, and also
so
the
heat is
soil.
trapped.
So
okay.
also the soil that's there, surrounding it also has microbes.
Do you supplement the fertilizer with other artificial fertilizers?
So actually, when it comes to fertilizers, nowadays people go with Jivamruta. That is actually trying to utilize the cattle urine and the cow dung, and they make it into a slurry, put it into barrels, fill it with water,
Okay.
add a little soil to it because of the microbes,
Okay.
and also add in some jaggery or stuff like that, and let it ferment for about like 10 days. Actually, this is a very old practice that used to happen.
It is getting back into fashion.
Yeah, it's actually getting back into fashion because people don't want to be
dependent
on chemical fertilizers.
When does exactly harvesting take place?
The harvesting time actually starts from the end of November, right? Up to mid-Jan. Yeah.
So how laborious is the process?
I think the most laborious thing about it is picking the coffee, harvesting it from the tree. Because what really happens is you get to see a lot of climate change during that time, at least in the recent present,
Okay.
There's a lot of rains coming in, which is making the coffee cherries.
In the month of November?
Yes, like
Okay.
November, December, the peak harvest season. The rain comes and it makes the coffee drop.
Ooh.
Yeah. So when the coffee is dropped and the farmer doesn't want to, of course, lose his
Correct.
hard work. So we are forced to manually hand pick them from the ground, which is so much more laborious.
Oh.
And to make it worse, because it rains, the coffees that are there on the tree, they try to mature more faster, making it harder to, pick, because during rains it's quite difficult anyways to pick. And it also allows these coffee cherries to burst.
Because of heat.
Because of I think it's because of fast maturation.
Okay.
It's like, have you seen, like, you have fruits at home and you don't eat it, and it starts becoming bad and it starts breaking open and there are flies coming. So that's basically what's happening here.
Whoa. All this is because of climate change.
All this is because of climate change.
Okay.
Yeah.
So climate change is not just affecting coffee, but also it is changing the labor's work. Like it is making work more laborious as well.
In fact, it's not just about picking it, it's also about drying the coffee. So when it's raining so crazily, it's very difficult to dry the coffees. There's no sunlight. We are very, very dependent on the sun.
Correct.
And because of that, we are forced to innovate and try to do
Adapt
more things. Yeah.
something.